Welcome to Parshas Vayechi, the last in Bereshis, here in Ner Avram. So, there's a lot written about the very beginning of the Parsha, Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz MItzrayim Sfas Reishana, and it's on one hand the Parsha that tells us about Yaakov's death, but it starts off with Yaakov living in Mitzrayim for 17 years. 17, the Sfarim point out, is the gematria of Tov, and that these were the best years of Yaakov's life. Right, that he had there in Mitzrayim. Now, what was the tachlis, so to speak? We don't see much action from Yaakov during those 17 years. The Torah doesn't tell us what he did during that time, but he reveals to us that it was good. Okay, so the Sfas explains. He brings from his grandfather the Chidush Yarim. Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz MItzrayim, that was setting up a template, meaning you can live in Eretz Mitzrayim with the midah of Yaakov, which is Emes. Right? The idea is, the Pasuk says, Titan Emes li Yaakov, the truth to Yaakov, that somehow, if a person holds on to the truth, even if you're in Mitzrayim, which again he's going to explain in a moment, the word Mitzrayim, it can be read as mitzarim, limitations. Anything that limits you, if you connect to the truth, that can help you extend beyond all of those things. So therefore, he says, the Pasuk could have said, Vayehi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim. And Yaakov was in Mitzrayim. Instead it says Vayechi, meaning that he was truly alive in Eretz Mitzrayim, which is very strange because he was in Eretz Yisrael beforehand. But he wasn't able to reach that, or at least here the chiddush is that even though it was in Mitzrayim, he was able to reach that true life. What is life? So life is, he says, dveikus b'shoresh u'makor. Life is when you're attached to your source. Okay, that is a fairly, I guess, kind of simple or obvious concept. When you're attached to the source of life, you're alive. When you detach from the source of life, you're not. He says that the source that brings life to us, jury rig, what you call, right? The source that brings life to us is always flowing. It's always a sense. It's like the idea of mayim chayim, water which always flows. And therefore, he says, Vayehi adam lenefesh chaya, that a person is a living soul. So the idea of nefesh chaya, nefesh is ratzon. Nefesh is a person's desire, a person's want, right? Avram Avinu said to the people of Ches, Im yeshes nafshechem, if you desire, right, please speak to me, to Ephron ben Chiti, so I can buy the Ma'ora Samachpela. So therefore, what Yaakov Avinu put into Mitzrayim, right, is the idea of Emes, and that if a person desires to find the Emes, so then you can find it even in Mitzrayim, and then you're not really in Golus, right? If you can see the truth, because what's described here, Chazal say, Lama Parsha zu stuma. Why is this Parsha written? If you got an Aliyah this week, you notice it's hard for the Balkari to find the Vayechi, because it's just right in the middle of a paragraph, usually a new Parsha. Right, so it's there, because it says, when Yaakov Avinu died, Nistemu eineim v'libam shel Yisrael. The eyes and hearts of Am Yisrael became closed. So, nonetheless, Yaakov Avinu wanted to reveal to them the Kates. Right? It says Yaakov Avinu wanted to reveal to them the end, right, which we assume means the end of days, what we call. But, right, what they explain in the Sfarim, the Sfas explains here and others, that it wasn't a date. It wasn't telling them it's going to be on the 12th of Adar in, the next 4,000 years or something like that. But it's the idea of how to live so that you can be in Golus without Golus really being there. Because Yaakov Avinu lived that way. He did it. Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim. And Mitzrayim, the grandfather of all Golios.
Why should he be allowed to?
So why shouldn't he be allowed to reveal it? So they explain, because then there wouldn't be Golus. In other words, we had...
You have to obey him. You have to do what he's telling you to do.
That's right. Keep it off. That's why Hashem didn't let him do it, right? We would have, because Golus, really, the ikr of the Golus is in the heart and the mind, right? Because Hashem's everywhere, and Hashem's behind everything. And Yaakov Avinu saw that. Mitzrayim didn't bother him when he was there. He was able to be Vayechi, to see the truth. Mitzrayim is sheker. Sheker ein lo raglayim. Sheker doesn't stand. Sheker doesn't last. It's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu there with Am Yisrael, right? Anochi eredim cha Mitzrayim. I'll go down to Mitzrayim with you. So he wanted to give that to them, but then they wouldn't be in Golus. Right? They would also be like him, that even if they were in Mitzrayim, they would be in the status of Vayechi. But the Zohar Kodesh says, if Yaakov Avinu wanted to tell them something, and Hashem didn't let him tell them, so why does the Torah tell us that he wanted to tell them and he couldn't tell them? Like, what do we get out of it? Thank you very much. You should know Yaakov Avinu wanted to tell them something very important, but he couldn't. Okay, thank you. What was it? So the Zohar Kodesh answers, he says he wasn't able to give it to them in a way which is goloi, which is revealed, but in a way which is sasum, he was able to give it to them, in a way which is hidden. So one way in which they explain, especially in Chassidish Yisraelim, that he gave it to them is he called them together and he said, Hey osfu v'agidolachem. Meaning, if you join together in Golus, then you're able to reach what I reached here in Mitzrayim, right? If you're able to do Heyosfu, if you're able to join together, so by being mevatel yourself to Klal Yisrael, and that can be starting off even with individual Jews to each other, so then, right, you have the Hashras HaShechina, and that you can do. So that's still there. Also, it's hidden in the Torah, right? Meaning the fact that desire to tell us was written in the Torah means it's hidden. It says hidden. It's still hidden in the Torah, and through Torah, which is the midah of Yaakov, Titin Emes Yaakov, and a person can still reach it in that way. Right? There's a famous story. I think it was the Rishner said that when he was learning Aleph Beis, so in the old Sidurim, if you remember, there's still a few like this. Instead of writing Shem Hashem, they would write two Yuds, right? Because if it ended up getting thrown out or not treated properly, it wasn't really Shem Hashem. So he's learning how to read, and he reads and he sees the two Yuds with a comment, so he says like, Yoy. So his Rebbe tells him, no, he says, when you see that, so that means you say Hashem, and I'll tell you how to remember. Because when you say Tzvei Yidden Zusammen, two Jews together, the Shechinah is there. Now you should know. Anyway, so then he read on a bit, and there was a colon, one dot on top of another. So he saw that and he said, Hashem. And the Rebbe said, why'd you say? He says, because I see two dots. He says, no, it's only when the two dots are next to each other. If one is on top of the other, then the Shekhinah is not there. That's not the right connection. Okay, so this is what a person is able to do. Now, he says, this is all purposeful, meaning the Golus of Mitzrayim that we're about to keep reading about a lot is kind of a mystery. Avraham Avinu was told, right, Geri Yazaracha Beretz Lohem Va'avadum V'inu Asamav B'Meil Shona. Right, it didn't come, at least clearly, as a punishment for something. The tzura, the form of the Golus, may have been a result, right? Like the Chasam Sofer says, others, Vatimole Haaretz Osam, when the Jews didn't stay in Goshen and they went out and they kept mixing into Mitzrayim, then the Golus got much worse than it would have had to be. I remember Moshe Shapiro told us once, he said, the Golus in Mitzrayim could have been in the tzura of Yosef being the Mishnah Lamelech to Paro. Right? We're childish. We think, wow, what a great job Yosef had. He was second in command to Paro. He says, Paro's the klipa. Paro's the tumah. Do you realize what a torture that was for Yosef to be meshubad to Paro, to be the eved of Paro? He said that could have been the shibud, and it didn't have to get to the extent of the shechita of Jewish babies and these things. It's when things went downhill, so then it gets worse. So he gave them the ability to be able to live there in Mitzrayim. Now, what does it mean to live there? They had a job to do. Okay, the fact that Am Yisrael had to start off going into Mitzrayim, there was something they had to do. So they had to learn to follow this path of Yaakov Avinu as best as we can. And this is kind of a mysterious connection the Medrash makes. The Medrash in the beginning of the Parsha brings a pasuk from Divrei Hayomim, Gerim Anachnu, right? We are Gerim. And the Medrash says, Ki kol briyas ha'adam b'olam hazeh lo haisa lidavik chaser shalom b'olam hazeh. Right? Meaning, why are you a ger? A ger is somebody who comes into a place temporarily for a purpose. Right? That's even, right, we say in the Haggadah that Am Yisrael didn't come l'shtakea b'Mitzrayim, elo logor sham, just to dwell there for a bit, because they told Paro, logor ba'aretz bono. We came for a particular purpose. We needed food here, we needed grazing here, whatever it is, and then we're going to go. So really, all of us come into this world, right, as gerim, meaning it's not to be dovek in olam hazeh. When you come in, it's not that this is your place and this is your everything. He says what it's supposed to be is al yedei dvekus ha'adam be'ikar achiyus. If we can remember to connect to that which is the source of all life, to that which is behind all of this, then mismashech gam inyonei olam hazeh la'Hashem yizbarach. So then you have the power to raise the things of this world to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he brings a fascinating examination of the word ger. Ger, he says, is like a behemoth that's male gera. The animal that chews its cud, he says, it's something that brings it from down up. It brings up its food and it chews it again. So he says, the idea of a ger, also even the ger tzedek, he says, the ger tzedek is pulling sparks of kedusha out from the tumah of the nations, right? That's the path, the meaning of the pathway of the journey of the ger, that he's there and he has to travel that way and he has to do it. So he says, so too in Mitzrayim. When Avram Avinu was told, ger yezaracha, that your children are going to be gerim, so that means that they're going to be going to pull the kedusha that comes out of Mitzrayim. And that is what's meant when it says, v'acharechen yetzu b'rechush gadol. And afterwards they're going to go out with great rechush, with great possessions. Okay? Right. Not just the gold and silver. Rechush gadol it brings is Rashi Teva's ger, just reversed, meaning the ger pulls the things from down up. Rechush gadol was that the possessions of Mitzrayim went up from down when they became belonging to Am Yisrael. That's why we tovel kelim, right? It's a strange thing, the tevilah of kelim, because a kli, right, a vessel of the right materials and it's made for food and for eating, it actually elevates when it goes to be part of the kitchen and the table of a Jew. So it has to go through a gerus, right? When it comes there, when you buy those items. So therefore, this is what Yaakov Avinu was showing them, and this did remain with them. Meaning, even though it wasn't there in a way which was golui, he left with them two things. He left with them the desire, the drisha, right, to know that there is something there, that there's something beyond that which is the Hester. And therefore he says, when the Zohar Kodesh said, Gila Masherotza Galos Rak B'derech Hester, he revealed what he wanted to reveal, just he revealed it in a hidden way. The parish is Al Yedei Emunah Yicholim Limtzoa Emes. Emunah goes above and beyond all these things. Emunascha Balelos. Emunah is for the darkness. Meaning, if you have that, you can understand that it's true I'm in the dark, but what that is simply Hester. It's simply covering something. There's a pasuk from the Navi, the Sfas Emes brings it a few times, HaChoshech yichasa eretz. The darkness covers the land. I mean, if you've ever been to a place that's really dark, which is hard to find nowadays on the planet, there's something called light pollution. There's light from everything. Right? Sometimes you go on a tiyul and there's no moon, and there's clouds covering the stars and everything, and no lights around, and it's dark. So it's as if the land doesn't exist. But it's there. It's just being covered by darkness. And Munascha Balelos, Emunah, is the way to be able to see this. So what he described here are two powers that we have to have. Number one is the idea of drisha, right, which is the idea of searching for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He implanted in them the idea that there's something hiding here. I can't tell you what it is. I can't let you experience it the way that I experience it. But I'm Vayechi Yaakov. I'm living this. And I tried to give it to you. I couldn't give it to you explicitly, but you can find it. If you search and you discover and you have emunah, so then you can do it. So interestingly, I found Rav Wolbe in writing about life, writing about Chaim, so he brings the Gemara that talks about, right, in Makos at the end, different Nevi'im tried to give Am Yisrael things to focus on.
A limited amount.
Correct. Something to focus on, and then with that to be able to do all the mitzvahs. And it went, right, from 11, what David HaMelech gave them, right, Micha gave them 3, right, Asos Mishvat, Avas Chesed, Atznei Alechasim Elokecha, and then came Ba Amos. Amos came Ve'amidon al Achas. Says one thing you got to focus on. Ko amar Hashem lebeis Yisrael, dirshuni v'chyu. Seek me out, right, and live. Meaning, he says that seeking is living. That is an expression of chiyus, right? That's the idea that a person who's truly alive knows that there's more here and is going to look for it. He says a fascinating thing. A game universally enjoyed by little children is hide and seek, right? They like hide and seek. Somebody hides, go find them, etc. So that expresses something deep in our nature, right? Meaning the world hides. The word world, olam, has the root ayin lamed mem, which means to hide. There's a little poem from Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, a 2-line poem. He says, I am tzedakah, where can I find you? Kvodcha tamir v'ne'elam. Right? Your kavod, your honor is lofty and hidden. V'aye loem tzedakah, where can I not find you? Kvodcha malei olam. Your kavod fills the world. Rabbi Gedaliah Shur explained, he said that that's what's meant by the name, right? Shin and Dalet and Yud, Shakai. Sha'amar lo lamodai. Chazal said, what is that name of Hashem that he said to the world, enough? He says that Hashem created the world, it was expanding, and suddenly he said, die, enough. He said that point was the point where you can find Hashem if you search for him, but if you don't see him. Okay, that's the point of die. So this is the idea. It says in Mishnah, Tevakshena kakesef, kamat monin, techapsena, az tovin yiras Hashem. So a person can search, and you can find that in any place. Right? That's why, right, the Sfas goes on here. He says that the very idea of drisha we find with what Chazal says. Yaakov Avinu lo meis. Right? Chazal said Yaakov Avinu didn't die. So it says there in the Gemara, was it for nothing that they described the whole burial and the whole thing there? So they come up saying, no, mikra ani dorish, I darshan a posuk. Mazaro b'chaim, afhu b'chaim. Just like his children are alive, so too he is alive. So he says, this is showing you the Yaakov Avinu way of life. If you seek to the point of exhausting yourself, that's the aspect of Torah Sheba'al Peh, to try and seek, right? Torah Sheba'al Peh is called like being in an ocean which you're kind of lost. It's like being in the darkness, but if you struggle in there, you can find the light of Yaakov Avinu even in the Hester. But Emunah is something else. Emunah is different in the following way. He says that Emunah doesn't require the same drisha as Yiras Shamayim. He says, right, the idea of dorshuni, right, that is really to seek it out. But he says Emunah is something different. He says, Hamamin sha'Kadosh Baruch Hu karov elav yisbarach. Right, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is close to him. And he says this kirva that comes from Emunah, right, for a person just to know, right, to know that Hashem is here. He says that Hashem has always been here, Hashem is here, even though I don't see him, right, the Drisha is to dig in and to be able to somewhat see the world like Yaakov Avinu, to be able to find that Yiras Shamayim. Emunah is not the drisha, it's not the digging with the seichel and such. He says it's the idea that Hashem has always been there and is always there. He says you don't even have to learn emunah. He says ladat shu yisbarach elokim chaim, that Hashem is, right, the source of all life. Haya rishon, just as he was before all things, he's here at all times. right? V'esachroni manihu, from the beginning to the end. So you have to live be'emunah. And here we have a fascinating difference. He says, to live with emunah, there's no condition even that you have to be a tzaddik. Ein t'nai she'yagam tzaddik. When the pasuk says, Korov Hashem l'chol korov, Hashem is close to all who call out to Him. L'chol asher yikru be'emes. Meaning, if a person calls out to Hashem, he's close to Hashem. He says, what's the condition? That it has to be be'emes. It has to be true. So what is that truth? Number one is that I'm calling out to Hashem because I have emunah. I know that even though I don't see Him, that He's there. And he says another aspect of emes is that you come as yourself, right? Meaning Chazal said that even a ganav, right, who davens to Hashem before his robbery, that can help him. It can help him be successful. Okay, but that's as long as you're honest. If you come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, listen, Baruch Shalom, right, it's me, I'm a ganav, right? What can I say? I'm a ganav. I need your help. I know there's no one else to turn to, right? The safe might be difficult to crack, right? Please, help me. And that could be, he's not coming to put himself forth as the tzaddik of the door. He's Shlomo the ganav, and he's karei be'emes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why I say, afilu Rosho botech v'Hashem chesed yisovenu. So Am Yisrael had to have both of these things in Mitzrayim. There's the idea that even if you can't reach the level of Yaakov Avinu, they were able to see the living example of Yaakov Avinu, of Vayechi. It did happen. It happened in Mitzrayim, and that means that it can be, and that connection can be, and that you can try and yearn for it. And the Amunah was there, that they called out to Hashem. That was what brought the turnaround we see in Shmos. When they cried out to Hashem, they were in very low state spiritually. But they called out to Hashem because they knew that's who you call out to. Vayizoku, right? They screamed out to Hashem, and that brought about the turnaround. So these are the things that Yaakov Avinu implanted. The Shem Shmuel says that Yaakov Avinu has these two midas. One is the idea of achdus, right? Of having everything you do be connected to that one goal. That's the Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. That's the oneness in our life. And the other is Yaakov Ishtom Yoshev Oholim, different tents, that he joined the higher world and the lower world. That he was able to realize that no matter what we're seeing in this world, behind it is a reality that we are connected to. And to that extent, right, you can rise out of Golus. People told me, I didn't ever read the book. It's a famous book, Viktor Frankl, right, who wrote about his experiences in the concentration camps. And it says, I believe, I read the quote at least, that Jews who were able to rise above the reality of the camps were able to survive. Jews who were able to say, this is not all of reality. This is a nightmare. This is here, but there is an Emes beyond this. There is something beyond this which is true and which is more eternal than anything that's being done to us here. So that's something that Jews have the ability to see and to connect to, and that's the gift of those 17 years of Yaakov Avinu in Mitzrayim.